Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, we'll be giving you a lowdown from this week's inaugural UK-Africa Investment Summit. The gathering was the first international event hosted by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, showing the continent and the world that the UK is interested in forging new ties with emerging economies. And later, Chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, talks with me about Anthony Joshua, remittances and prospects for Nigerians living in the UK post-Brexit. Before that, joining me here in the studio is our business correspondent, Simon Pusey, with a breakdown of this week's headline-grabbing stories. Simon, this Huawei extradition case is heating up.
Yeah, so this has been going on for months now. This is a top executive at Huawei, which is obviously a telecommunications giant in China. The name of the person is Meng Wanzhou. She's 47, and she arrived at Vancouver courthouse. She made no comment on Monday as she was taken to the courthouse. The US wants Mrs. Meng to stand trial on charges including fraud linked to the allegation that she violated US sanctions against Iran. Mrs. Meng, who was arrested late in 2018, so it's really been going on for a while. In Canada, she denies any wrongdoing. The case involved Huawei's chief financial officer is being closely watched in Canada, the US and China. Her arrest has created a rift between China and Canada, and back on Monday, Beijing repeated its calls for Canada to release Miss Wang. Meanwhile, the Chinese telecommunications giant has said it stands by the chief executive, and she's supposedly going to take over. There's a succession plan in place to take over at the firm, so they really want her back.
Right, Huawei, never far away from the news. And Isabel dos Santos, Africa's richest woman, her legal woes are ongoing, aren't they?
Yeah, so this is obviously a massive story, and it surrounds really the leaked documentation of 700 documents, which reveal apparently how the Africa's richest woman made her fortune through exploiting her own country and corruption. That's according to a documentary that's been aired here in the UK in the last few days. Isabel dos Santos, whose father used to be the president of Angola, of course, got access to lucrative deals involving land, oil, diamonds and telecoms. That's according to those leaked documents. They show that how she and her husband were allowed to buy valuable state assets in a series of deals in the South African country, which is obviously famous for its natural resources. The former president's daughter has made the UK her home and owns lots of expensive properties here in central London. She is already under criminal investigation by the authorities in Angola for corruption, and her assets in the country have been frozen. We must say that Ms. dos Santos does say all of the allegations against her are entirely false, and that there is a politically motivated witch hunt against her by the Angolan government.
Can't have you here, Simon, and not talk about Brexit. Seems to be more woes for consumers this time.
Yeah, so this is a warning from businesses that the price of foods may go up and that jobs may be affected. And the reason is really that the Chancellor has said that they will end alignment with EU rules after Brexit. Now, the Food and Drink Federation said the proposals were likely to cause food prices to rise at the end of this year. The Confederation of British Industry said for many firms, keeping existing EU rules would support jobs, and the automotive, food and drink and pharmaceutical industries, they've all warned the government last year that moving away from key EU rules would be damaging. The Confederation of British Industry said that for many companies, keeping the same rules would support jobs and maintain competitiveness. But it looks like the government are going the other way and saying they're not going to stick with these existing EU rules. So it remains to be seen.
Gosh, Brexit only a few days away. As always, thank you so much, Simon. Here's some other business news from across the globe. Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, has asked leaders to push towards globalization to mitigate against growing economic uncertainties and transatlantic trade wars. This year's Davos meeting, which was themed Stakeholders for a Cohesive and Sustainable World, attracted US President Donald Trump and teenage environmental activist Greta Thunberg. North Korea has placed a ban on foreign tourists due to the spread of the new deadly coronavirus. Travel advice and airport screenings have been put in place across the world. Fears are growing over the virus, which could be spread through human contact, as millions of Asians will be travelling for the Lunar New Year holiday this week. Boeing has announced that the return of the 737 MAX has been delayed once again. The company said it did not expect regulators to approve the jet to fly until the middle of the year. Boeing and the Federal Aviation Administration have continued to find new flaws with the MAX. The corrupted software contributed to 2 accidents in late 2018 and early 2019 that killed 346 people and led to the worldwide grounding of the plane. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has urged Western global powers to include China in their multilateral system and treat Beijing equally to avoid a Cold War. Merkel is planning an EU-China summit when Germany takes the EU's rotating 6-month presidency in the second half of the year and wants to keep up with Germany's lucrative trade ties with China without antagonizing America. The financial crisis at South African Airways has deepened as a funding squeeze led to the national carrier cancelling some domestic and international flights. The airline stopped some flights from its Johannesburg hub to Cape Town and Durban, as well as to the German city of Munich. It's been waiting for the government to provide $137 million promised when the airline entered a form of bankruptcy protection last month. So far, the emergency funding has not materialised. Now, over to our first topic. The UK-Africa Investment Summit took place on Monday at the Intercontinental Hotel in London. 21 heads of state were hosted by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and with Russia and China increasing their influence in Africa, for the UK it's become absolutely essential that post-Brexit Britain plays a key investment role on the continent. The benefits for Britain are crystal clear. By 2050, 1 in 4 global consumers will be African, and Africa is home to 8 of the 15 fastest growing economies in the world. Britain plans to become the largest G7 investor in Africa by 2022, and the UK-Africa Investment Summit served as a springboard.
Well, I think that it's quite commendable that the UK has spearheaded this initiative to bring African heads of states and businesses together. And the idea is to make for a cross-fertilization of ideas and to match governments with potential investors. And for us, that resonates very well, in Ogun State particularly. Being a subnational whose vision is basically to promote public-private sector participation. And if you know, Ogun State is the next state to Lagos, Lagos being the 5th or 6th largest economy on the continent. But more importantly, Ogun State is home to the largest number of industries in Nigeria. So for us, being here is extremely important. We've enjoyed a lot of push from Lagos because of course, the landmass of Lagos not being as big as that of Ogun State. But we are converting that into a pull factor. So we're here to meet potential partners. Again, like I said, our vision is to provide a focused and qualitative administration that would be ensure that it creates an enabling environment for a public-private sector partnership. We believe that if we're able to bring in investors, more investors, it will lead to the economic development of the state. When there's economic development, it will translate to individual prosperity. So the rest of the week, I'm going to spend in meeting a lot of potential partners that have been lined up for me by the UK government. We're very excited about it. We're focused on the areas of healthcare, areas of power, areas of infrastructure and agriculture. And it promises to be a very fulfilling and busy week.
I think they've been trying to put together this conference for about 9 months now. Have certainly been invited in the last 7 months or so. But I think given the turnout, the array of the heads of government that are here, and also subnational, I think the British government is truly, really serious. And listening to the welcome speech by the Prime Minister, it's sort of like just confirmed my own expectation that in truth, they've realized that whilst all fingers are not equal, some are actually just taller than the others. And he had actually also said that there's really no exclusivity anywhere, right? So the fact that we're colonized by Britain about 6 years ago, does not give any right or any additional benefit to investment. Investment is truly really open to everybody, right, in all parts of the world. So it's truly a function of who is a partner, who stands to you and see you as a fellow partner, not behind, not in front of you, but standing right beside you, right, and he sees you, the challenges you have, and they're asking ways in which we can work together. So for me, those early points truly points to the fact that, in truth, we probably can begin to see true real partnership coming out from conversations like this.
We came here for two things. One, and I have found solution for off-grid power to propel my agro-industrial revolution, especially focusing on women for cassava and rice farming. So if I can provide power for rice mills, provide power from cassava processing, provide power for oil palm processing generated from the waste of this process, it makes my day. And but I'm looking forward to also bigger discussions and conversations around our smart city, because we're building the Enyimba Economic City, which is going to be the Dubai of Africa very soon. Yes, the most attractive economic zone in the whole of Africa. Abia is hosting it, and I'm very proud to say that we will look for big companies that will support infrastructure, big companies that will support transportation, and big companies that will support logistics in the Enyimba Economic Zone. And that will completely make my day. I want to begin this new decade on a brilliant note that is looking bright.
It was interesting that when Prime Minister Johnson made his keynote, he alluded to the fact, and he was quite frontal about it, that Britain needs Africa. And that is a very, very important confession on his part. And it shows the seriousness with which the British government is taking this whole thing. And we're hopeful that at the end of this exercise, we will see positive things coming out of it.
I think post-Brexit, the British government needs more emphasis on Africa, and considering what one has seen by way of the organization behind what we are witnessing here now, clearly Britain takes Africa very seriously. And Africa also needs Britain. Africa needs to connect, much more so, to emphasize the development agenda that is also inclusive of gender, the feminine participation. And I can see a lot of women in this organization that we have seen. Apart from that, fintech and technology, these are areas of attention. Africa needs to export a lot of its produce in order that they can use the process and resources for us to continuously increase and fortify our infrastructural development. Clearly, development is a function of continuously looking at the various factors of production, but everything on development is based on engagement, relationship, and mutual cooperation.
Well, the energy is palpable, although it's a one-day event, but you can see the level of enthusiasm both among Africans and among the British. There is a feeling that long-lost friends have rediscovered themselves. The Prime Minister, His Excellency Boris Johnson, set the tone, and the President Sisi followed. The recurrent theme in their speeches today was, let's now find a new way Africa is looking for partners. UK traditionally have been a strong and reliable partner. That partnership waned over the years. It can be revived because Africa is the continent of the future.
Coming up, Channel's Business Global had an exclusive sit-down with Chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa. See you after the break.